Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Welcome to Cannabis Common Sense. In our hemp news segment, we have had our studio closed for several weeks as it's being remodeled by the kind folks at Portland Community Media. And you're welcome to come back on February 3rd when our studio reopens. But we're going to have our hemp news segment for this week. Out of Washington, D.C., legislators in a number of states are pushing forward measures to delay the enactment of several voter-initiated marijuana laws. In Arkansas, House lawmakers unanimously voted in favor of legislation, Arkansas House Bill 1026, to postpone the deadline for establishing the state's new medical marijuana program by 60 days. 53% of the voters approved Issue 6 on Election Day, which called on lawmakers to regulate the production and dispensing of medical cannabis within 120 days. In Maine, leading House and Senate lawmakers have endorsed emergency legislation LD 88 to delay retail marijuana sales by at least 3 months. Under the voter-initiated law in Maine, rules regulating the commercial marijuana market are supposed to be operational by January 1st, 2018. In North Dakota, Senate lawmakers unanimously passed emergency legislation, Senate Bill 2154, to postpone the deadline for the enactment of the North Dakota Compassionate Care Act. 64% of voters in North Dakota voted to back the measure, which gave lawmakers a 90-day window to regulate the distribution of medical marijuana. In Massachusetts, lawmakers previously enacted legislation imposing a 6-month delay on the licensed production and retail sale of marijuana. Legislators are also debating making additional changes to the law, including raising the proposed retail sales tax and limiting the number of plants an adult may grow at home. In Florida, health regulators are also calling for changes to Amendment 2, which was a state constitutional amendment that passed with 71% of the vote. You know, this is an affront to our democratic process. Voters have lived with the failings of marijuana prohibition for far too long already. Lawmakers have a responsibility to abide by the will of the voters and to do so in a timely manner. These laws are wrong. They need to implement it sooner rather than later. The Arkansas Medical Marijuana Commission decided on a fee of $100,000 for those waiting to obtain a license to legally grow medical cannabis. This is in addition to a $15,000 fee just to apply for the license. Commissioner Dr. Carlos Roman argued for a much lower fee of $15,000, saying he didn't want to keep a large part of the population from being able to obtain a license because of this proposed $100,000 fee. On the other hand, Arkansas Commissioner Travis Story pushed for an even higher fee to be set at $185,000. His argument was that he wanted to ensure that businesses wouldn't quickly go under and shut down. Obviously, I think his point is to add additional financial burdens to make marijuana too expensive for this to be successful. Arkansas passed a law legalizing medical marijuana this November. It allows patients with certain qualifying conditions to receive a recommendation for medical cannabis from a physician. Medical cannabis dispensaries are expected to be open in the state sometime next year. In Massachusetts, a 1 million square foot facility for growing marijuana is scheduled to open this fall in the small town of Bristol County, Massachusetts. The Freetown, Massachusetts property will feature a state-of-the-art medical cannabis cultivation facility known as the Massachusetts Medical Cannabis Center. The center will be one of the largest marijuana cultivation facilities in the United States. The first phase of construction will begin in March and will include a 130,000 square foot facility for the cultivation and processing of marijuana plants and a 30,000 square foot space for the research and development of marijuana goods. American, a publicly traded company based in Denver, purchased the land this fall for $4,475,000 from the Boston Beer Company, the makers of Samuel Adams beer. According to American's CEO, Tim Koff, he says, quote, "This is a project that's been in the works for quite a while," end quote. All marijuana cultivated in the Freetown facility will be available for sale only in Massachusetts as required by state law. In Washington, D.C., Nearly 7 out of 10 police officers believe that marijuana ought to be legally regulated for either medicinal or recreational purposes, according to a Pew Research Center survey of nearly 8,000 law enforcement personnel. 32% of respondents supported legalizing the plant for adults, while another 37% agreed that marijuana ought to be regulated for medical purposes only. 30% of the police said that marijuana ought to continue to be illegal for any reason. Law enforcement views continue to be more conservative than the general public, 81% of whom endorse the legalization of cannabis for medical purposes, and 60% of whom support broader legalization for adults. Out of Oakland, California, cannabis consumers spent over $53 billion on marijuana-related purchases in 2016, according to a report released this week by ArcView Market Research. The total includes sales of cannabis in both legal and illegal markets. In jurisdictions where marijuana is legally regulated, sales totaled an estimated $6.9 billion in 2016, a 34% increase over the 2015 totals. The authors estimate that legal sales will total nearly $22 billion nationwide by the year 2021. The research also finds that an increasing number of consumers are gravitating toward non-traditional forms of cannabis, such as concentrates, which have enjoyed increased market share over the past 3 years. An executive summary of the report, The State of Legal Marijuana Markets, the 5th edition, is available online from the cannabis venture capital group ArcView. Back to Washington, D.C., hundreds of people dispersed through the streets of Washington last Friday for the inauguration of Donald Trump to hand out thousands of free joints and raise public awareness about cannabis consumption. DCMJ, the organizing group, said it was distributing some 8,500 marijuana cigarettes, double the originally planned number, following an overwhelming public response. Alan Amsterdam, one of the event's organizers, said volunteers had been rolling joints for 3 weeks. Amsterdam, who looks rather like a biker, said his main hope is that the new administration will keep its hands off the city's legalization of cannabis. Trump's nominee as Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, is a critic of legalization. Amsterdam said Friday's dope distribution was not political. Alan Amsterdam said, quote, "This is a nonpartisan event. We welcome Trump supporters, Clinton supporters, and Bernie Sanders supporters. Everyone who stands with cannabis is welcome. We want people to know that cannabis is legal here in the District of Columbia, and we want it to stay that way. Our message to Trump is leave it that way," end quote. Marijuana was legalized in the District of Columbia for medicinal and recreational use in 2014, though not for commercial sale. Also out of Washington, D.C., in the last major act of President Barack Obama's term, he cut short the sentences of 330 federal inmates convicted of drug crimes on Thursday, most of them cocaine offenders. This brings his bid to correct what he's called systemic injustice to a climactic close. With his final offer of clemency, Obama brought his total number of commutations granted to 1,715, more than any other president in U.S. history, the White House said. During his presidency, Obama ordered 568 inmates who had been sentenced to life in prison free. Obama's White House counsel, Neil Eggleston, said in an interview in his West Wing office before Trump was sworn in, quote, "He wanted to do it. He wanted the opportunity to look as many as he could to provide relief. He saw the injustice of the sentences that were imposed in many situations, and he has a strong view that people deserve a second chance," end quote. For Obama, it was the last time he planned to exercise his presidential powers in any significant way. At noon Friday, Obama turned over the presidency to Donald Trump last week. Even as Obama issued the commutations, the White House had been mostly cleared out to make way for Trump. In between carrying out their last duties, the few remaining staffers were packing up their belongings as photos of Obama were taken down from the walls. Final batch of commutations, more in a single day than on any other day in U.S. history, was the culmination of Obama's second-term effort to try to remedy the consequences of decades of onerous sentencing requirements that he said had imprisoned thousands of drug offenders for too long. Obama repeatedly called on Congress to pass a broader criminal justice fix, but lawmakers never acted. From Vermont, Vermont Governor Peter Shumlin, a Democrat, announced pardons Tuesday for 192 people with former convictions for marijuana possession. All but 15 of those pardoned were residents of Vermont. The state decriminalized cannabis in 2013, but has not yet legalized and regulated the plant, as 8 other states have, including Vermont's neighbor, Massachusetts and Maine. Although laws and attitudes toward marijuana have changed a lot in the past several years, few governors have issued pardons to marijuana offenders. According to Professor P.S. Ruckman, Jr., professor of political science at Rock Valley College in Illinois, he told the Christian Science Monitor that what Governor Shumlin's doing is it's almost unimaginably safe from criticism if you think in terms of 40 years ago, end quote. It's highly, again starting the quote, it's highly significant. I think it's likely we'll see more of it, end quote. Governor Shumlin's pardon applied only to people convicted of possessing less than an ounce of cannabis who had no violent criminal histories, felony convictions, or records of driving under the influence or reckless driving. Quote, when you look at Vermonters who are sitting out there with criminal records because they had an ounce or less of cannabis, it could have happened in the 60s, 70s, or 80s, and there's thousands of them, he said in early December. Governor Shumlin said that there are likely others that are eligible for pardons. Out of Indianapolis, Indiana, the American Legion of Indiana passed a resolution on Sunday calling on state lawmakers to permit veterans access to marijuana as a therapeutic remedy. The resolution acknowledges that legalizing cannabis access will reduce opioid addiction and overdose death, and urges members of the Indiana General Assembly to amend the state's legislation to remove restrictions from marijuana and reclassify it in a category that will, at minimum, recognize cannabis as a drug with potential medical value. Legislation is pending in the state. Senate Bill 255 is establish guidelines for the licensed production and dispensing of cannabis to qualified patients. During its national convention in September, the American Legion called on Congress to remove marijuana from its Schedule I classification under federal law. With nearly 2.5 million members, the American Legion is the largest veterans advocacy organization in the United States. For more information, you can visit Hoosier Veterans for Medical Cannabis, their website. And that's the end of our main hemp news segment tonight. I want to tell you that, for some of our long-term viewers, you might know that we have had a hostile takeover of our medical marijuana clinic, and we are in the midst of a trial that's debating some of their issues. They're trying to get a preliminary injunction against me personally and my associates, so we can't compete with them. So I urge you to come into court on February 10th in Multnomah County Courthouse. We'll be in front of Judge Matarazzo in Multnomah County Courtroom 528. Again, that is on Friday, February 20th in Multnomah County Courtroom 528. Will be first thing in the morning. We plan on starting at 8:30, but anytime you can be there would be most appreciated. Thanks again. We'll be back next week with a live show. The studio will be fixed, and we'll be back on February 3rd. We have a live studio audience, and you're welcome to come down there and talk to us or come over to our after show party. Thanks for watching.
Oppressive lies and fantasies isn't how it has to be. and ignorance throwing stones like so many brainless clones. Sound the alarm, re-educate. Sound the alarm, investigate, investigate. Now is the time for the truth. Whoa, whoa. Now is the time. Whoa, whoa. Now is the time. The time is now to speak the truth, to seek the truth, to be the truth, to be the truth. Corporations and governments are rarely ever innocent, and dissension is the only way, and live to see another day. Sound the alarm, re-educate. Sound the alarm, investigate, investigate. Now is the time for the truth. Whoa, whoa. Now is the time. Whoa, whoa. Sound the alarm, investigate. Sound the alarm, re-educate, re-educate. Now is the time for the truth. Whoa, whoa. Now is the time. Whoa, whoa. Now is the time. Whoa, whoa. Now is the time. Whoa, whoa. Thank you very much.
When you call for the legalization of hemp and the legalization of pot, you are making a political statement that that does not conform with the standard wisdom of the time. The criminalization of drugs only enhances the power of some tired old white males in Washington, D.C. who want to continue to control people of color, poor people, women, young people, and people who disagree with the way this nation is being run today. You see, it's all right in the United States to be an alcoholic. That's because George Bush and his cronies are alcoholics. It is all right in this country to consume legal drugs. Drugs that destroy the mind, the spirit, and the body because huge multinational conglomerates produce, manufacture, and distribute these types of drugs.
Getting high about what the pigs are doing, stuff like that. No offense, fellas, but it's just the way it is. Met into some Ohio hippies. They got their van lifted for 3 seeds. Really ridiculous stuff. The punishment should fit the crime. Right now you can pistol whip somebody, you can rob a bank, you can do a lot of things, and you'll do more time messing around on marijuana than you will do like stuff like that. It's not right. I don't know how they can get behind enforcing those kind of laws. The word came down from above, from Big George or Nancy, I don't know who it was. Now to grab people, throwing them in jail, it's all bullshit, all the way along the line. They can't defend themselves as far as I'm concerned.
I think that, that the herb should be legalized because there is, as I say, a big difference between smack, crack, and smoking flowers. And I'm sick and tired of my friends being dragged off or their houses or cars being confiscated for a joint of marijuana when there are 500,000 deaths a year from alcohol and nicotine. I mean, come on, let's get real here. So what I suggest you do is let's legalize it. We could do it if we got together. We could do anything.
Thank you for taking time for hemp. Tonight on our show we have a very unusual and a unique guest. Unusual in the sense that he has spent a lifetime defending the sanctuary of the individual and trying to bring about the importance that government stays out of the individual's life and the individual's allowed to make their own choices. Brilliant, he's a futurist. He's able to foresee farther down the road than many of his contemporaries and tries his best to bring forth his knowledge and his insights. Please welcome on our show, Dr. Timothy Leary.
Well, Casper, it's a pleasure to be here. I approve very highly of your program. I understand it's growing nationwide now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
How many cities are you in now?
At present, we're in 80 cities and in 44 states.
Oh, boy, that's good.
And getting the word out like this is very exciting. Now, you've always been known as the highest rider of every generational wave.
The what?
The highest rider of every generational
Wow.
wave. You've been the forefront. You've been there from the World War II to the early 60s, the 70s, able to, speak the voice and be heard and foresee it. Realizing this, how do you think the wave of the hemp movement is going to settle into the population and break upon the shores of our ecology problems?
Break up the shores of our ecology problem.
Yes, sir.
I can see that. Oceans of green hemp doing that. The present laws against hemp I think are the most irrational and I would say almost insane pieces of puritanical legislation. Maybe you have to go back to the Salem witchcraft trials to get something where so much hysteria has picked out something so benign and so harmless and so profitable and so productive, and had this all-out moral, fierce, religious campaign against hemp. Why do you think that there is this religious, fundamentalist, and police government prejudice against hemp? Well, how do you explain it?
My personal views, that I feel that it stems from a lot of the oil companies and the people who can make money off it being illegal, keeping it illegal, and together put together a propaganda campaign to mislead the public. And I feel that it will set into the people's mind eventually when the truth is more exposed. Now,
I understand that we're not going to talk about the religious or the emotional, psychological aspects of hemp.
Correct. The recreational purposes.
Yeah, we won't talk about that at all. We're going to talk about the practical and the profitable and productive.
Yes, sir.
And the ecological aspects of it.
Absolutely.
I don't know a lot about that. I've read books by Jack Herrera. I've listened. Gosh, there's so many programs and so many articles these days. Everywhere you turn around, you hear intelligent discussions about hemp as a substitute for oil, hemp as a substitute for wood pulp, hemp as a source of energy. It's exciting. The thing that I know most about, however, is the puritanical crusade against hemp, because I was in prison for 4.5 years
for under an ounce, right?
For the possession of 2 roaches which had been planted in my car by a generous, overly generous policeman. And at one point I found myself in prison facing like 50 years imprisonment. I was 50 years at the time, 50 years old. I think, well, this is a strange series of events for such a harmless and even beneficial situation to be charged with so much time.
Now, you escaped from there too, didn't you? The first time.
Well, I did what any sensible 50-year-old would do if you're facing 50 years in prison for 2 roaches of marijuana that they planted in your car. The only common sense thing to do was to escape, and I did that, and made a few little B-movie adventures there. But, there are many things in our society that have to be controlled and governed. For example, oil. Look at the way oil is polluting and our atmosphere and acid rain and so forth. Guns should be controlled. I think drugs like steroids should be controlled. I think there should be probably more control over alcohol and nicotine. And of all of the botanical, vegetable species that the government is attacking, marijuana is the one they're going after. That's interesting. I sometimes say that hemp is a democratic plant, because it was during the democratic regime of Jimmy Carter that hemp was legalized in 14 states, and Carter himself and his cabinet wanted to decriminalize marijuana. And in 1980, you had the Republicans coming in with a hard line, typical crush them, down them.
Just say no.
Yeah, and suddenly the new drugs, which are everywhere, are drugs that I never heard of back in the 60s and the late 70s. Things like crack and cocaine and steroids, they didn't exist. So I call them the Republican drugs. Now they're Republican drugs, why? Because Republicans are hardliners, like to feel tough and aggressive, and I'm number one, and we're going to go over there and we're going to, kick butt. And if you're going to go out there and loot a lot of savings and loans companies, and if you're going to go out there, you got to have a lot of energy, and you got a lot of self-confidence. You got to get chewed up with cocaine or a little steroids there. Arnold Schwarzenegger, of course, is the typical example of the steroid. We call him Conan the Republican, 'cause he's whereas the one thing about the use of hemp as a drug, I've had to warn Republicans about this. If you're a Republican and you're a hardliner, and you want to go out there and kick and stretch and get yourself to the top, and if you're in the army or the police or anything like that, you want to have to be tough and mean, and stay away from hemp. Because hemp will turn you into a wimp. I mean, really. Look at Carter. He was believing in peace and love, and we stopped
And all the wrong things, right?
All the terrible things.
All the
So,
terrible things.
You understand why? Right now, the government is spending much more money crushing the production of hemp. And another thing that puzzles me about the insanity or even the diabolical nature of the right-wing religious Republican situation. Why do they go after the American farmers? They spend more money fighting hemp in this country. You know, in California, which is my home state, hemp was the #1 agricultural cash product. In Iowa, in Tennessee, and like
Back in Indiana, where I'm from,
yeah,
as
how
well.
many states?
At least that we're aware of, 28 or more.
Yeah, honest farmers
Yeah.
out there trying to make a living growing hemp, and the government is out there arresting these good-hearted, free enterprise farming agricultural Americans. Meanwhile, down in Colombia and Peru, these gangsters, these cocaine cartel people, are making billions of dollars, and we're spending less money on them. It's how come? I think you're probably right that they don't want people to be using hemp because it would interfere with the oil monopoly. It would interfere with the wood pulp monopoly. And also, I think there's something really religiously diabolic and evil about the right-wing Christians in this country who go after hemp because they hate people to have pro-choice and to make your own decisions about your life. And
They seem to be some of the people, too, who overlook the medical aspects of hemp.
absolutely, yeah.
Now, from your perspective and being a psychiatrist as you are, you've had the opportunity to become acquainted with many different aspects of healing and some of the more positive benefits of the uses of hemp. Could you share that, please?
Well, there have been an enormous number of studies that show that hemp and cannabis was extremely necessary for certain forms of glaucoma. You simply have to have it. There, in many states, these fanatic anti-pleasure people are so afraid that the patient who's going blind might enjoy the experience that you got to go blind, die, but don't have a good time because the Republicans are in power. I mean, that's apparently the logic here.
Aren't they using it too for anorexia and for
Exactly.
cancer, AIDS?
I mean, there's one terrible thing about hemp, and I don't want to get into the use of marijuana, but I got to be honest with you. There are some terrible side effects of smoking or using marijuana. One is it's called refrigerator blackout. I mean, you get the munchies.
Oh, okay.
You know, you smoke a joint, and suddenly there you are. The next thing you know, you've eaten 9 pounds of fig Newton, and say that's dangerous. You gotta be careful there. On the other hand, if you're dying of cancer or malnourished because of stomach problems and you don't have any appetite, hemp, of course, is the logical and obvious and natural medicine to give you an appetite to see you through that period. But again, a good true Puritan would rather have you die than
Now we also
have a good meal while you're giggling.
we also know that it's good for stress to calm you down. And from a viewpoint of a psychiatrist, is there any benefits for someone who might be having emotional or mental problems, as opposed to giving them like Valiums or some of these other stronger drugs that seem to be causing problems, like Prozac and so on?
Yeah. Well, number one, I don't want to come out like a smart ass here, and every psychological situation is individual and needs its own, its own pharmacology. So I don't want to generalize, but certainly the things about hemp is it's not addictive. It's extremely it doesn't have any of the side effects of many of the euphorics and the antidepressants that are approved and that doctors' prescriptions will give you. So, there's a. You see, the thing about religious fanaticism is that the crazier, the nuttier, the wilder, and almost the more nonsensical the belief, the more you hang on to it. So that I've debated for many years a man who was the head of the DEA for about 5 years. His name is Peter Bensinger.
Yes, you have.
And I can't believe him. He's going after hemp, and he's trying to say that, Hemp. When they gave a lot of some mice some hemp, and it made male mice, teenage male mice, and it made their breasts grow a little. So he said, "Why, if you college boys, you see if I'm going." I think, why is he going? There are real problems of crack babies in the inner city, and alcohol, which is our number one drug here, and nicotine. 500,000 people die a year from that. Here's this guy blathering on about the dangers of I don't know. He never did mention whether marijuana would make girls' breasts bigger, but I don't even want to get into that. The whole thing is.
Okay,
so
now you've
silly.
also had a few debates with G. Gordon Liddy too.
Yeah, that's right. I have that. Yeah.
And he seems to think that marijuana, i.e., hemp, is one of the plants that's going to lead to a complete social breakdown in our structure of government. And you seem
Well,
to
I know
stand-
Gordon Liddy. I've been debating him. I've known him for years, over 25 years. I know exactly how his mind works. And like a good army man, like a good military man, like a good policeman, like a good follower of his leader, Richard Nixon,
Okay.
Gordon Liddy has never had one unauthorized thought in his life. So he reads the line, so he knows that. What is it? LSD makes you jump out of windows. Marijuana makes you, what is that? I forget what it is.
Let's say it's the gateway drug.
Yeah, it's a gateway drug.
That's
yeah,
right, it's the gateway drug.
Yeah. So, I must say here, and I don't want to offend anyone. And if you're a deeply devout Christian, I want you to turn your TV off now. But I feel that there's a great problem in this country in a violation of our civil liberties and personal rights on the basis of the federal government interfering with women's bodies about abortion and these insane war on drugs. Because the war on drugs is a war on Americans. It's not a war on Russians or evil communists and all that. It's a war against 40 or 50 million of us marijuana smokers in this country, which in a way seems like a weird thing that a majority in Congress should suddenly declare war on 30 million otherwise tax-paying, reasonably productive American citizens. I think that the basis is religion.
Okay.
And basis is that you're not allowed to choose what you want to do. It's like any fanatic religious, they'll tell you you can't use contraceptives because you can't enjoy sex. And if you do conceive a baby, you have no choice about whether you want to bring this baby when you can handle this baby. And the same thing is true about the choice of your own self-medication. And I personally believe that the war on drugs is the worst attack on American freedom that we've experienced in 200 years. You know, this is the 200th anniversary of the Bill of Rights. It was in 1791 that they passed those 10 wonderful bills. And basically, what most people don't realize is that the Bill of Rights and the Constitution is designed to protect the individual against the government. So the government can't come into your house without a search warrant. The government can't put soldiers in your house. The government can't force you to testify against yourself. The government can't tell you what to read or write. The government can't tell you how to worship your own God. The government can't tell you how to really mind your own business. So it's both ironic, and I think it's also very hopeful that in the year 1991, in the 200th anniversary of the Bill of Rights, this hemp movement is growing. And I want to tell you it is growing. I give a lot of the talks to students in colleges, and the awareness of the insanity of the marijuana laws is becoming, I think, more and more obvious.
That tells us that perhaps we are finally making an impact across the United States and perhaps around the world. We are really enjoying this interview, and we'll be right back after this. Thank you. Welcome back to Time for Hemp. Today on our show we have the distinguished Dr. Timothy Leary. Timothy, I think you've been aware of some of the changes in the laws here within the American structure of Congress, and all the way down to dog catcher opinions from Nancy Reagan swaying our opinions to just say no.
I have a motto in a bumper sticker and a t-shirt. It says, just say K-N-O-W, no. Think for yourself and don't believe what Nancy Reagan says. Don't believe what I say. Think for yourself and question authority. And
Well, because of this conservatism, though, some of the laws that were established during the Carter administration, such as decriminalization of marijuana, etc., are beginning to go back to another era, when the minds were narrow. In Alaska, they've changed the laws back to stiffen the laws.
We are
Colorado, they're
going
closing
through a
down.
period now. It's what happened in the 60s and 70s. We had in this country a classic renaissance. Now read the history books. A renaissance is a period when there's a sudden surge in self-expression, in the rights of the individual, a loosening of the control of authority, a questioning of a religious dogma, and then a lurch forward. This is always followed by a hardline retreat, so that it's at the same time that there has, in the last 10 years in America, under Reagan and Bush, been this very repressive hard line. Look what's happened to the rest of the world. You know, in Russia just 3 weeks ago, when they had that coup, and then a bunch of young people in Moscow protected Yeltsin and stopped the tanks. You know what it was that was stopping the tanks? It was young Russians, students, who were throwing flowers at the tanks.
That sounds familiar, doesn't
Does
it?
that sound familiar? They
Sounds real
learned that
familiar.
absolutely from the American in the 60s and 70s when we were questioning the authority of Johnson and Nixon and stopping the Vietnam War. Another thing that was amusing about the Russian Revolution, and it's very connected with this, the three men young men who got shot by the tanks and were immediately promoted to the highest office or honor of the Soviet Union, the highest order of the land. They were three hippies. And, one was a Grateful Dead head, and one like heavy metal rock, and they let their hair grow, and they all had learned to smoke hashish in Afghanistan. And indeed, they were trying to stop the tanks because it was their brothers and their friends and their colleagues who were in the tanks, because it turned out that the Soviet soldiers that had been sent to Afghanistan hated the idea of going down there and killing Afghani people for no apparent reason. So that I'm very proud of the fact that although in America we've had this very predictable but very violent and mean and nasty Puritanism, and you can't smoke cigarettes, and they're censoring rock and roll records, and they're censoring books.
Now,
one by one, they're going down the list of personal freedoms. At the same time, the basic American freedoms, which we set going in the 60s, are appearing in the Soviet Union. I go over to Japan.
And ours are reversing, it seems like.
Yeah.
It seems like the hemp issue could be one of the last strong divides that we face as a body of people in America. Everybody seems to have an opinion, everybody seems upset. Make it
I
legal,
think that
illegalize
the
it.
hemp issue is the place where you can draw the line. And anyone who's watching this program, in your city, there's obviously a channel which is carrying this message. Get in touch with the people that are producing this show in your locality, and start embarrassing your local politicians by asking them, for example, of your congressmen and assemblymen and women, how many of you smoked marijuana when you were young, huh? We know that about 80% of the members of Congress under the age of 50 were smoking marijuana. How come they could do it and we can't do it?
There's even been reported rumors that people all the way up to the White House may have been involved with it.
White House, oh my God. we do know that Ronald Reagan smoked marijuana, because that came out in the book by Kitty Kelly. When Ronald Reagan was governor of California, used to smoke marijuana. And you know, when you think about it, that explains everything about poor Ronnie Reagan. It shows you why Republicans should not smoke marijuana.
Why is that?
Well, the amnesia, the forgetfulness, the short-term memory loss, the cheerful, hey, what's wrong, baby? Everything's fine, even though the country's going down.
Yeah, okay.
The long naps after lunch. You know, I mean, Ronnie, come on, leave marijuana alone.
Now,
by the way, both Ronnie's children, Ron Jr. and Betty Davis, of course, it's kind of silly. The point I'm making here about the place, I think, to take a stand, abortion rights is one place, but marijuana, you can do it, the way to do it is through humor. Write letters to the editor. Challenge politicians as to whether they really think that alcohol is more dangerous than marijuana, and if so, why? And on a very common sense, logical, friendly, humorous
You've
approach.
always been one for the wit and to tickle people with a laugh and make them think, I've noticed. You do what you can to stimulate the mind in a fun way.
That's the aim of the game.
I think that's oftentimes why you've been so misconstrued by your contemporaries. They can't take a joke.
Well, good. I'm glad I'm misunderstood. The number one way to bring down any repressive authoritarian regime is irreverence. And I pride myself, I think I have a very high IQ, that is irreverence quotient.
Okay.
And I have been a leading dissenter in this country during the Johnson administration, during the Nixon administration. I'm proud to have been, I'm proud that Richard Nixon called me the most dangerous man in America. I mean, after all, what an honor. And
Yeah, really.
and I want to urge those of you who just think for yourself. And the hemp issue is a wonderful issue to bring people together, because it brings together ecology. It brings together a substitute for petroleum, which of course is the real Republican addictive drug. It's such an ecologically helpful situation. Above all, it prevents us from cutting down the Amazon rainforest for wood pulp, because, or cutting down for fiber, because we all know that hemp is by far the best material. So that there's something that's very wonderful about a plant, and that human beings kind of rally behind a plant. Those 5 wonderful leaves that kind of represent wonderful, and the great thing about it is the right-wing Republicans and the right-wing religious fanatics hate it. And you know why they hate it? Because it makes people feel free, and makes people free feel funny and independent. And
Now, I would...
if they hate it, it's got to be something good about it. That's my logic.
I would shoot myself if I didn't ask this one last question, and that
Oh
is...
my gosh, don't do that.
Because so many people say, you had Timothy Leary there, why didn't you ask him in? We have really tried to shy away from the recreational uses, so we don't want to make it a long respond, but do you feel that when consumed as a recreational plant, that it can bring you more in tune with your own being, with your own self, maybe put things into better perspective? Or is it like liquor, when you drink it, you're just so out of touch that you don't know what's going on?
Well, I spent 40 years scientifically studying the various botanical, vegetable gifts that the plant queendom has given the mammalian animal kingdom. And no question in my mind that the mushrooms and marijuana are the greatest gifts given to us by the vegetable, the plant, the kingdom. You can misuse marijuana. It does make you there are like 3 dangerous side effects of marijuana. One is you kind of see too much, and that makes you kind of a little spacey, because you know you just do see so much. And the second is short-term memory loss, like you forget what you were talking about. And the third dangerous side effect, I forget. No, don't ever smoke marijuana or use marijuana if you're going to go to school, if you're going to do anything that requires attention, concentration. It's just absolutely stupid. Do not use marijuana. Marijuana should be used for moments of real celebration and of glorification. And the one thing about marijuana is it's not a loner. It's something that you do with somebody else.
Okay.
The idea that someone would go off and smoke marijuana by themselves, I mean, it's ridiculous.
Kind of like doing this talk show that we've had the chance to do today.
Yeah.
I want to thank you very much for being a guest on our show. I'm being told by the side people here on the sides that we need to wrap it up. And I tell you, you've given us a lot of food for our minds.
Well, I'm all behind your cause, and it's an honor and pleasure to be with you, and thanks to the crew who did a great job.
I'd like to have you back on again sometime.
Okay.
Thank you. And the next time you see me, remember that you'll know it's time for him. So please join in, look around, tell your friends, get copies of the show, send it off to governors, send it off to senators, send it off to people whose minds are closed. Tell your friends about it. If you are a victim of this war on drugs, and feel that bringing your story to us might enlighten it to the nation where we can help make a change, please let us know. If there's people in your community who need to be focused on, please let us know. And if you have a challenge regarding any of our statements, remember Jack Herer once said, $10,000 to anybody who comes onto this show and disproves our findings. Jack Harris stands behind that statement. It's an honor to have him on our show. And again, I'll look for you the next time. Thank you.
And here's a video celebrating Dr. Philip Levesque.
Well, I think it's very interesting that we know from historical records that cannabis has been used for literally thousands of years, and nobody has ever reported any bad effects from the use of it.
Yeah.
And when you compare that to tobacco or to alcohol, there's absolutely no comparison between tobacco, alcohol, and marijuana. There's just absolutely none whatsoever. And the statement that marijuana is a gateway drug to heroin or cocaine or whatever, this was verbally thrashed by the Institute of Medicine that said there was no evidence whatsoever that this was the case. So I think the main thing that we're doing is supporting General McCafferty and a whole bunch of DEA agents who are making very high salaries and don't want to give up the game, as you might say. So the people that are making money on the marijuana issue are the DEA agents. So I guess the federal prisons, the guards in the prisons are probably also recipients of a lot of money from the marijuana business. So
Exactly.
It's really a strange, absolutely bizarre situation that this has gone on, and I can't understand why some of these politicians in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere can't see this or understand it or whatever the right word is. I don't understand it.
I was a battalion scout and point man, and any of you guys are veterans, you know what the hell a point man means. The life expectancy is about 30 minutes or so, something like that. And I was in a war history writing class with about 10 Vietnam guys, and I told them that I was a point man and scout. They says, "Oh no, you weren't." And I says, "God damn it, yes I was." And they said, "Nah, you weren't. If you were, you'd be dead." So here I am, mean as hell, and so forth. How many of you read the story in the Oregonian last week about the DEA trying to get hold of your patient's charts? How many of you raise your hands? You read that? Well, let me tell you, the DEA skunks and the local cops are all going crazy because you bastards have permits to use marijuana. When the board took away my license in November 3 years ago, I was really disgusted with this because they thought that they were punishing me. They were not punishing me, they were punishing my 4,000 patients. And I get the idea that they were trying to stop the medical marijuana program.
Marijuana is the best drug we have found so far for the treatment of PTSD. And within the last month, I just wrote an article that marijuana prevents PTSD suicides. And I got about 1,000 comments on it from all over the country.
Well, you know, I was in the military, but I didn't see combat. But I do know, as a marijuana user, that when I smoke marijuana, I don't have dreams.
Yeah.
And when I quit using marijuana after a couple of days, I start to have some very vivid dreams.
Yeah.
So obviously, the use of marijuana will help.
That is one of the worst symptoms of PTSD, and you probably wouldn't imagine what the second most important symptom is.
What's that?
Not being able to talk about what was your worst experience. Tell me about your worst experience. Bam! Just like
so, did you feel that way after World War II? I know you went through a lot of very traumatic experiences in fighting your way into Germany and meeting up with the Russians there.
My first day, I was committed to combat. I got in an artillery barrage that just blew the hell out of this little town where I was, and the next day they hit me with a mortar barrage, And when we crossed the Rhine River, I got strafed by German planes. I got strafed by American planes. We lost 150 men in less than an hour.
Out of how many? 150
out of our battalion.
And a battalion is what, about
1,000?
About 1,000. So 150 out of 1,000. That's a pretty heavy attrition rate. 15% in an hour.
We had my battalion, my division, had the worst casualties crossing the Rhine River.
So there is Dr. Philip Levesque. I'm glad that guy brought him up. You know, Dr. Levesque helped thousands of people and one of the first medical marijuana doctors. He helped